Why does no one blink when Catherine, Princess of Wales, wears thousands of dollars in designer fashion, but Meghan Markle gets criticized for wearing pieces that cost just as much? Catherine steps out in a $3,000 coat and the headlines call it diplomatic dressing. Meghan Markle steps out in a $3,000 coat and the comments section explodes with criticism. It's the same price point. Very different reaction. So what's really going on here? It's not just about the money. It's about the meaning and the purpose behind it. On paper, the numbers don't lie. Both women wear luxury brands. Both step out in designer pieces that most people can't afford. And yet, Catherine's wardrobe and styling is often described as elegant, appropriate, aspirational, and relatable all at the same time, while Meghan Markle's similar price tags tend to attract criticism and backlash. So what's the real difference here? How can Catherine's style be widely considered relatable despite those expensive price tags, and Meghan's absolutely not? In this video, we are getting to the bottom of this issue, and we're going to break it down into three main parts: the role and the symbolism behind the clothing and how that plays a role in how we view it, the relatability factor at play, and the execution, because the details matter way more than people think into how we read these outfits and these choices. Hi everybody, I'm Biebs Kelly. Welcome back to another Royal Fashion Edition. A quick side note before we begin, I filmed this the other day and somehow I lost some chunks of this footage, so I'm filming a fresh intro, and I hope you don't mind the lack of continuity here. Please excuse me. So one thing that Catherine has done extremely well is making her style sense feel very relatable, even though she wears very expensive garments sometimes. I mean, there are hefty price tags involved much of the time. And I mean, for goodness sakes, she goes to state banquets in tiaras like these. But she still comes across as so deliciously relatable. Whereas Meghan Markle has been criticized as pretentious, and she lacks relatability. And her expensive wardrobe is often blamed as why she doesn't come across as relatable. Even though she left the royal family and wants to live a normal life and is doing normal life stuff, like she is not part of this public duties and service to the people type situation at all. She's a public figure because she inserts herself into the public sphere, but yet her wardrobe approach is way less relatable than Catherine, even though we have these two very big differences here. Like the aesthetic and the vibe, it almost feels counterintuitive to say that this looks more relatable than this, but it does. What this really comes down to, and the reason behind it is fascinating to me, is signaling theory. It's not about the price tags, it's about the intention behind the outfit. Luxury items come across very different if they are perceived as serving the role rather than serving the ego. And that distinction is everything. But it's also a microcosm of the difference in style ethos between these two ladies. And once you understand how relatability is constructed, not just priced, certain looks suddenly make a lot more sense. So Catherine, Princess of Wales, doesn't seem to use luxury lightly. It's rather an institutional tool. Her expensive wardrobe somehow magically still feels relatable. Part of the reason is the repetition. Last year in 2025, she wore the same coat 3 times, which is a lot for a royal and a lot for a public figure. Celebrities almost never wear the same garment on the red carpet more than once. Take that as an example. The repetition signals restraint. By re-wearing coats, dresses, gowns, and other items, it reduces perceived extravagance. It signals stewardship, not indulgence. And viewers get the feeling that she values what she has. When someone repeats a $3,000 coat 5 times over 8 years, it feels like an investment, not a flex. She also doesn't have a ton of garments that look really, really similar. She has the same dress or coat or piece in multiple colors, which again is a tool for her role, but she doesn't have a ton of things that look almost identical. Meghan Markle, on the other hand, seems to have like 20 of these coats. that are beige, oversized, manly, ill-fitting. Too many, I would say. But they are all so similar that it feels extravagant and unnecessary. Catherine also is really, really skilled at mixing high and accessible brands. She often incorporates high street brands, British mid-range designers, and older pieces from pre-royal life, which activates identification. I could recreate that look is what it sends to the people watching it. It reduces that social distance and it increases relatability because it's about aspirational proximity, not affordability. I could make a look like that, or I could get some pieces similar to that, or I could buy things that create the same silhouette as that. This is a perfect example. It incorporates all the royal dressing methods and things that we have been discussing, but it is a silhouette and a grouping of pieces that almost anybody could find and buy at almost any price point. Even when she's wearing luxury items, it has a clear role alignment. It makes sense. And the pieces are still really carefully chosen. They're still structured and tailored and formal and contextually appropriate. It reads as this is necessary for her job. Luxury framed as part of her professional requirements makes it feel a lot more legitimate. And when she's wearing a British designer, no matter the price tag, it's still elevating the British fashion industry, so it has purpose. Meghan, however, seems to use luxury as personal expression. Her attempts at minimalism with high price points feels like status coding. She oftentimes favors ultra minimal neutrals, quiet luxury silhouettes, and designer heavy wardrobes. The issue here isn't minimalism, it's what this minimalism is signaling. This sort of approach communicates insider status, elite access, if you know wealth, and that increases social distance instead of reducing it. She also has a lot less outfit repetition, which can trigger perceived excess, perceived disposability, and new look every time optics that feels unnecessary. Even if it's unintentional, audiences subconsciously track this. We are extremely sensitive to fairness and resource signaling. So it's really undermining her attempts to connect to the public as well. Meghan's also feels like individual first context. Catherine's luxury pieces are clearly for the role, whereas Meghan's often read just for personal aesthetic, especially because she no longer has a real role. And that subtle shift changes the emotional response. Luxury within the role feels earned and makes sense. There's a logical reason behind it. But luxury for individuality feels performative. The underlying psychology here is very interesting. The signaling theory at play here is that luxury communicates status, but status signals are judged differently depending entirely on that context. So that is why Catherine's approach is framed as part of her role, whereas Meghan's feel like it's just part of the personal brand, which changes how we view it and how we react to it massively. It's also that social distance. Catherine feels like she's embedded in the same world as all of us, whereas Meghan's like overly curated and bad execution of these expensive items feels very unrelatable and out of touch. For Meghan, it feels like she wants to signal wealth and that's the priority, and it feels like it's a tool to elevate herself as an individual. Basically, the bottom line is that Catherine's wardrobe says, I'm representing something bigger than myself, and Meghan's usually says, I'm expressing myself within this space and through these expensive clothing items. And within the monarchy, these two messages land very, very differently. American celebrity culture does tend to reward individuality and luxury, but Meghan doesn't really fit into that space of an American celebrity, really. And British royal culture rewards restraint and continuity, and Meghan also doesn't fit into that space either. But this clash here, it's not just cultural, nor is it exclusively personal. The problem lies in Meghan's confused public persona, really. She wants to do the celebrity thing, but she still wants to cling to the titles and be viewed as a philanthropist or a cultural leader of some kind, based on her and Harry's desperate attempts to cling to this faux royal identity. And so this identity clash is ultimately what makes her clothing choices feel that much more disconnected and unreasonable and leads to more criticisms. But it's not just our perception. Although we may recognize quality or occasionally we might recognize a designer versus high street, ultimately, when we get the impression that the price tag must be high, in this case, the facts actually do back that up as correct. I put together some comparisons of wardrobe expenses tracked by various websites. Let's see what this data shows. I compiled estimates of priced items tracked by sites and annual averages. This includes priced items, specifically new items, to measure just how much Meghan Markle is spending on new items worn in public that were successfully matched and priced versus Catherine, Princess of Wales. This is valuable data to demonstrate how the public's perception is actually more accurate than you might think when it comes to presentation, outfits, wardrobe, clothing, styling, all of it. So here in 2025, we see that Catherine is at nearly $93,000, while Meg is at a whopping $197,000. Over $100,000 more than Catherine on new items worn out in public in 2025 alone. However, when we look at the average cost per item, we see that Catherine is coming in at $1,400 and Meghan is coming in at $1,100 just about. And that's mainly due to the fact that Catherine only had 75 new items tracked, while Meghan had 111 new items that were successfully tracked, meaning we were able to connect the dots of that specific item and confirm its price. This is mainly due to the fact that Catherine rewears pieces a lot more than Meghan Markle does. But if we go all the way back to 2018, we see that her annual average estimate is about $85,000. While Meghan's was over $500,000. Meghan had 323 new pieces, with 254 actually successfully matched and priced, making her average cost per item $2,000, double what Catherine's average cost per item was. That year, she had 117 new items tracked, with 81 successfully priced. Mainly, once again, this was because of a high rate of outfit repeating, but also in 2018, Catherine had maternity leave. Meghan had her initial joining of the royal family in 2018, so it kind of makes sense that there was a little bit more on Meghan's side. Like, we would expect a little more on Meghan's, but $500,000 is crazy to me on 1 year alone. No wonder Charles said, slow down. But let's take a look at 2019 and see if Meghan Markle slowed down at all. It being her second year of royal duties, you'd think maybe she would be a little bit more on par with Catherine's spending for clothing, but no, she still doubled what Catherine spent on clothes in 2019. As you can see here, Meghan wore more new pieces in public than Catherine did and spent about double. If we skip ahead, though, through the COVID years and Megxit, where there was a lot of weirdness and inconsistency in everybody's appearances, public appearances, let's skip ahead to 2023 here. We see that the annual spend is actually a little bit closer to one another, with Catherine at $122,000 and Meghan at $107,000. Catherine's jump here to over $100,000. Every year we've tracked so far, she's been under $100,000 annually. Here, this is mainly due to the coronation. There was not only a lot more events around this time and called for some new items, a little bit of a wardrobe refresh, and most notably her bespoke Alexander McQueen ivory silk crepe gown and the intricate floral silver headpiece worn for the coronation is included in this cost. So I feel like this is very justifiable and makes total sense. When we look at new items tracked, Catherine had 135, which again, that makes sense. Very understandable to kind of give a little bit of a wardrobe refresh and inject a little bit more pieces that reflect her elevated role and status within the royal family at that time, because now she's officially queen in waiting. The following year, in 2024, though, we see Catherine's spending on fashion obviously plummet because she was largely out of the spotlight the entire year of 2024. And Meghan, though, when we look at her numbers, she spent over $140,000 in 2024. This included her Colombia and Nigeria publicized vacations, where she obviously spent a lot. But when we compare that to other years of her, this is one of her most expensive years besides 2018. And there really is no good reason for it. This year would have been a great year, like if you were strategizing Meghan's wardrobe, to pull back in some of those fashions that she had debuted when she was a working royal, especially since she and Harry were trying to make themselves look like royals. I'm not sure why she did that. This is kind of insane. But when we look at this graph, it really brings it all together. As you can see here, Meghan is the orange line and Catherine is the blue line. For public engagements, the only years that Catherine spent more than Meghan, you can see it's by a relatively small margin every time. And it includes 2020, when we did have COVID and Megxit happening, but Catherine was really the only one out there in the public. 2022 and 2023, Catherine's spending outpaced Meghan's as far as public verified spending on new clothing items, just by ever so slightly, just a tiny bit. And those were the years where we had Queen Elizabeth II's passing and King Charles' coronation. So it's kind of wild to me to see just how little gap there is in Catherine's spending exceeding Meghan's, versus when you look at the points on the graph where Meghan's spending outpaced Catherine's, it's by massive margins. I mean, 4 times as much in 2018, double in 2019, just a tad in 2021, and then 2024 is a total exception to the data. We can't really include that. It's a gross outlier. And 2025, again, I mean, not quite double, but getting there, close to double what Catherine spent in 2025. Based on data estimates tracking these new items debuted each year, Meghan has spent significantly more overall between 2018 and 2025 than Catherine. In fact, these reports suggest that Meghan outspent Catherine by over $640,000 in total across this period of time. Take that in, you guys. Over $500,000 more spent over the same period of time. And what this data reveals is some clear trends. Much of the total disparity comes from 2018 and 2019, when Meghan debuted a completely new royal wardrobe, including a high-value maternity collection and tour outfits. In 2018 alone, her spending was estimated at roughly $500,000 compared to Catherine's $85,000. I mean, it makes Catherine look very conservative in her spending compared to Meghan when you put these numbers together, especially given the position and status within the family and all of the events going on. If we were to look at these ladies' fashion spending averaged out over like a daily spend, Meghan spent nearly $1,000 per day from her 2017 engagement to early 2026 on clothing and accessories, while Catherine's average for a similar track period was more like $400 per day. A lot more reasonable. I mean, still, this is very expensive, but think about it. Like I said, this is a queen in waiting here. Catherine frequently engages in re-wearing existing staples, and to be fair, she has been with the royal family for a lot longer, so she may have more of those elevated staples and elevated pieces to bring out, like gowns and things like that she re-wears. But at the same time, when we look at the same period of time, clearly Meghan re-wears items far less than Catherine does when it comes to public-facing engagements or events or anything of that nature. But the most recent full year estimates of 2025 showed that Meghan remains a higher spender. She actually ranks third globally among royal women at nearly $200,000, while Catherine is ranked seventh at just shy of $100,000. So what does this really mean besides confirming our perceptions of Meghan's outfits as being very luxury, very high end, and a tool to elevate herself and her public image versus Catherine's more understandable expenses for wardrobe that come across a lot more relatable and reasonable? In my opinion, it just demonstrates how much Meghan is not paying attention to what her style communicates, as well as an obvious affinity for just, having labels and wearing new stuff and worrying a lot more about that than anything else. And it's also important to note in the context of where these outfits are worn. We all know what Catherine's been doing, but Meghan, do you really need to be spending this much annually on outfits for sporting events like Invictus? For frolicking about Montecito? I don't think so. But let's zoom out and take a little bit of a closer look at some of the royal dress codes and how Catherine has modernized her style approach within her role, which has given her icon status, and her fashion choices have strengthened her image, and compare it to some of Meghan's attempt where her choices created distance instead. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, is frequently seen in outfits like these that balance tradition with real-world comfort, something that's relatable and admirable. Practical footwear, for example, can't be understated. The message that sends. Clothing that's functional for events like these not only makes sense, but it gives Catherine's image a grounded vibe. Outfits that she can move in and be comfortable in that still look professional make more sense. An example of Meghan Markle missing the mark here on this is when she wore stiletto heels to a sporting venue. She's done this multiple times, but this one I would say is the weirdest because she's out on the grass like this and she was part of the royal family, so what's happening. But this outfit would have looked just as polished and had a charm to it had she worn trainers like these or even flats, or just a shorter square heel at most, or even when she wore trousers that puddled on the ground at Wimbledon. They're a trip hazard, they'll get dirty, it looks messy and ill thought out, and it just doesn't make sense. These show that she didn't prioritize relatability and comfort or practical choices, and she didn't balance tradition with it either. It's just like aimless choices that seem to have no rhyme or reason behind them. Overall, Catherine, the Princess of Wales's approach to style philosophy feels very fashion forward, very wearable, thoughtful, and current. And her accessories, particularly her jewelry, are often charming, symbolic, and personally sentimental. And they really reinforce a well-rounded image. Her balance of personal taste, relaxed and comfortable style with respect for her role is a really masterful balance. She is able to incorporate true high-low dressing and create outfits that have harmony, which is a skill that really does take time to develop. So when you strip this all back, it's really not about the price tags at all. It's about the purpose. Catherine's wardrobe supports an institution and a role that is significant. It reflects diplomacy, continuity, respect for the role that she holds, and even her most expensive pieces feel anchored in something bigger than herself. And she also takes great care to wear her most luxurious items in an appropriate way that shows respect to the price tag. Meghan's wardrobe, without that institutional framework at play, is judged very differently, especially when the styling doesn't consistently deliver polish or occasion-appropriate precision. Her lack of care in styling and wearing these items, or not being thoughtful about where she wears them, tends to undermine her outfits and her presence, and therefore the purpose for spending so much on the clothing. It looks more like she's wearing them for the sake of elevating herself rather than for some other reason. So the bottom line is that luxury without clear purpose feels indulgent, and self-indulgent at that, whereas luxury in service of something larger tends to read as justified. And that's the real difference. More than the dollar amount itself, that's what really shapes the public perception. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a happy day ahead, and I'll see you next time. Bye!